Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I am glad you made it. There are two House bills out there that I wanted to talk to you about today, as they could potentially affect the appeal process for disability claims. So with that, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I truly appreciate it. And like anything, when it comes to legislation, bills and acts and whatever, pieces of legislation that are introduced, if you support them, you need to reach out to your congressional members and let them know that you support it. The more voices, the better. You could do it by email. You could do it by phone call message. You can stop by in person and let your congressional representative know that you support that legislation. So with that, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Found this article by Linda Hershey on Stars and Stripes. Came out April 19th, 2024. Wanted to share it with you today. The headline is, two House bills aim to streamline veterans' appeals for disability claims. All right, I like to read these articles because sometimes it gives us another angle to look at something, and we may be able to uncover some nuggets and turn over some rocks. So let's see what we got here. A pair of bills that aim to ease the lengthy process for appeals with regard to disability claims with the Department of Veterans Affairs would keep the same judge on cases, track delays on pending claims, and immediately notify veterans about missing or incomplete forms holding up their review. All of that sounds great already. Thank you. Do it. Moving on, the Veterans Appeals Option Expansion Act and the Veterans Appeals Efficiency Act offer technical changes to shorten the appeals process for denied claims and decrease backlogs on benefits decisions that topped 320,000 in March, according to the sponsors of the bill. Representative Mike Bost, who is the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, is leading both bills. Thank you, Mr. Bost, which overhaul the appeals claims process for decisions involving disability compensation and benefits, describing the appeals process as outdated and decaying, said Representative Stefanik. She is the co-sponsor for both bills. She said the intent is to end cumbersome requirements that provide much needed reforms for efficiencies in the process. Simplifying appeals for veterans is a focus for the lawmakers as the number of claims for benefits processed exceeded 1 million in March. 1 million in March. But the VA rejects about 40% of claims filed each year, with many veterans moving to appeal. That was the case for Navy veteran Billy Wide, 71, who said he was informed an appeal that he filed this year for disability benefits related to central nervous system was not to be heard for 3 to 7 years. He's 71 years old, by the way. It is a rare disease that only 2 people in 1 million get, said Wide, who served in Vietnam for 9 months until March 1973. Wide, a former petty officer, 3rd class, filed an original claim in November 2022 for disability compensation related to Agent Orange exposure from his military service, but his claim was kicked back to his regional VA office in Cleveland as incomplete. Wide then filed a supplemental claim that was rejected in January. The claim is on appeal. Other crew members on my ship have been granted disability for Agent Orange exposure, but they got cancer. The Agent Orange affected me differently, he said, referring to his diagnosis, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the blood vessels. Wide said his disease was diagnosed from a brain biopsy. Medical claims for disability are getting more complex, which slows down the process and leads to more delays, according to the VA. There has been a 200% increase in the last 10 years in claims containing 8 or more medical conditions for which a filer is seeking a disability rating and benefits. The VA will alert filers when their claims are incomplete or if wrong information was provided, which can lead to a denial, but the notifications sometimes do not arrive for months after the claim was filed. The Veterans Appeal Options Expansion Act would provide veterans with more choices to control how and when their appeal claims are processed by the VA Board of Appeals, Boast said. Under current rules, veterans must choose whether to have a full hearing before an appeals board judge or request an administrative decision from the VA, which often takes less time. The bill would give veterans flexibility to change how they want their appeal processed once an initial filing is made. It also would require the VA to backdate approval for compensation for cases that had required additional information from the veteran for a review and a decision. The bill also would require the VA to update Congress regularly on the average length of time that a claim is pending after it is sent from the appeals board back to a regional VA office for a second review. So when you send your claim as an appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals, the board has three options for you: denial, approval, or remand. Remand is sending it back to the VA to have them do more work. But even when they approve it, even when the board approves it, they send it back to the VA, and the VA has to then do their stuff before it actually takes effect. Sometimes it could take a few months. Moving on, the Board of Veterans, and I got bored on my mind. Okay, moving on. The Veterans Benefits Administration averages 18 months to review appeals and render a decision on some parts or all of the case, according to the VA. A veteran also may take a case to the appeals board, but the process can take 5 to 7 years because of backlogs, according to the VA. The Veterans Appeal Efficiency Act would enable the appeals board to aggregate cases that involve similar questions of law or fact. Contributing to the backlog are higher numbers of disabilities claimed in individual filing. So in other words, back when I filed my first claim, I filed for two things. I was denied for both, and I threw my hands up in the air and I left. Now, people will file, because you're being educated of what you can actually file for. You're doing a self-diagnosis, you're trying to figure everything out, and you're filing for 7, 8, 12 things or more. I think the most that I ever saw somebody file for, not my suggestion by the way, but the most that I saw somebody file for was in the 80s. Retired pilot filed for 80-something conditions. So that takes the VA longer. I'm not saying don't file for it, but file for things that you absolutely are going to win. Don't just not have the evidence to back it up. Have the evidence for every single thing that you're filing for. Moving on. All right. So the number has doubled in the last 5 years as far as the number of disabilities that are claimed. According to the VA, with the post-9/11 veterans from conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan making up nearly half of the inventory, the VA said. The complexity of the case, availability of medical and service records, and the number of pending claims also affect the decision time. The legislation would authorize the U.S. Court of Appeals for veterans' claims. For those that don't know, if you're still on here, there's two courts with regard to your VA claim appeals process. I call it the lower court and the upper court. Then obviously you can go to the Supreme Court. But when you appeal out of the VA system, right, you did a supplemental or higher level or whatever, now you're moving it to the Board of Veterans Appeals. It's seen by a law judge, right? That's the first one. If they deny you, you can appeal that and take it to the U.S. Court of Appeals for veterans claims, right? That's your next step. So there's two courts in that process. Let's move forward. The legislation would authorize the U.S. Court of Appeals for veterans claims to certify class actions to include veterans with claims for which no final decision has been issued. The VA also would require would be required to give veterans reasons in a timely manner when a claim is deferred or placed on an internal administrative hold because of a problem with the filing or incomplete information. The legislation also would enable a claimant to get a timely explanation for a deferred or suspended claim where action is delayed. Right now, the VA makes a mistake and you can't hold them accountable, Wyde said. And that concludes it. Wanted to bring you aware of those two pieces of legislation introduced on the House side. Thank you so much to Stefanik and Boast. Appreciate the work. Keep it up, and let's push those across the finish line. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one, and remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.